Welcome to Why the Work Matters, a podcast by DVIP and RVAP Crisis Services. DVIP and RVAP provides comprehensive support services to persons affected by domestic violence, sexual violence, dating violence, stalking, and human trafficking in 8 counties in Iowa, including Johnson, Iowa, Cedar, Des Moines, Henry, Lee, Van Buren, and Washington counties. In these episodes, we will explore the stories behind the mission, stories of resilience, healing, and the people who make change possible.
My name is Delaney Dixon. I go by D, and I am the Assistant Executive Director at DVIP and RVAP. I've been there since 1999. I started as a youth advocate, part-time, summer, just hanging out, taking the kids to summer school, and it evolved from there. I loved the work, I loved the people, I loved the organization, and so it has been both my passion and my purpose. Before I worked at DVIP and RVAP, I trained as a teacher, as an elementary school teacher. So my interest that brought me to DVIP and RVAP was children, working with kids. And what I found when I was working as a teacher was that the kids that I really focused on were the ones who were having the most difficulty in the classroom. And as a teacher, my focus was to be the curriculum, and I found my focus really being on that student that fell asleep in class all the time. And so when I moved to Iowa City, this opportunity arose to be able to work in this program. And the truth is, I didn't know what the program was. It's just a DVIP, and I didn't know what DVIP meant because I wasn't from the Iowa City area. So I was taking a leap of faith. But once I got into the program, once I worked with the kids, once I worked with the families, and I engaged with my colleagues, I really saw something that I had never seen before, which was a meeting of the minds, a space where we worked to empower people to make their own decisions and not tell them what to do, but to ask them what they wanted, and then how could we support them in that. And I know that most social services believe that's the model that we work with, or they try, and that's the guidelines, but so often it runs up against traditional social work models, and you fall short of that, and you become part of a system that starts to be paternal and starts to tell people what to do or what they're supposed to do, as opposed to hearing what they're saying they need and allowing them to make their decisions, good or bad, right? So I was hooked in that challenge to myself, challenge in making those pieces fit for a family, and I just never looked back. Empowerment of people is exciting. Seeing people come into their own, seeing people making their own decisions and living those decisions, positive or negative, is exciting to see because there's critical thinking involved in that process, right? There's learning who you are as a person. There's healing in this particular work because we're dealing with gender-based violence. And there's redefining yourself. Like in this work, so often your perpetrator tells you who you are and erodes your autonomy and what you thought of yourself, and you lose that connection to self. This work's goal is to reconnect you, is to redefine yourself, is to find yourself, and to watch that and be a part of that for somebody is awesome. I am not the reason that you grow. You grow on your own, but I am there to help you. And then so often in this world, we feel like we're alone, and that there's no one who has that experience as me, and you have to be tough all the time. And working at DVIP and RVAP, that's not the case. You get to heal, you get to be vulnerable, you get to explore your options and think, what am I, or what can I be, or who am I without this person who has been violent, who I trusted without them in my world. And so that's a passion and a purpose. And it expands and it grows outside of just that local experience of working with fantastic women, men, and children to really globally, right? Like, this isn't just about that family that you work with that you found an attachment to. This is about a way of thinking that you want the entire world to think, which is people deserve autonomy and empowerment and to be able to make their own choices over themselves and their bodies. So that doesn't change for me. That only grows stronger. I think people associate the term victim with weakness, and nothing could be less true. Victims are creative, they are strong, they are innovative, they are cunning, they are some of the most interesting individuals I will ever meet, and I am in awe in how they recommit every single day to living their lives and hopefully their best lives. What is my favorite part of the job? My favorite part of the job is the people. My second favorite part of the job is the purpose and the passion. Sometimes the job is hard, right? Like, it's challenging. Like, the pieces don't fit. They don't come together the way you want them to. Or the decisions that a person you're working with is left with is really, it stinks or it's stinkier, right? Like, there's not a good choice. That's part of life. And so those days are hard. Sometimes you go home and you want to cry. Sometimes you feel like you failed someone. But you get back up and you have that passion, you have that purpose. You know why you're doing this. At least I do. I know why I'm here. And that never gets tiring. So, and then I go into the office, or I go into our shelter facility, and I engage in conversations, and it's just refortified that this is awesome, this work is awesome, this place is awesome, these people are awesome, and the unfortunate circumstances that someone placed upon them, because it's not their fault, it's the perpetrator's fault. They made that choice and took away the autonomy of this family and put them in this position to deal with these consequences, right? So my favorite part of the work are the people, and then the second is the passion, but then the third is the creativity. I think at the base foundation of advocacy, it's being a creative problem solver. So every part of you is engaged. Every skill you've ever learned, every talent you've ever had becomes a part of how do we get to the next level for a person or a family. And that's exciting. That never gets boring. It gets taxing. You get tired, you get exhausted, but it doesn't get boring. So every day is a new day. Every day is a different day. Each family is unique, so every challenge is different. We're willing to try, right? Like, there is no, nah, we can't do that, unless there's specific regulations or something, funding-wise, ethics-wise, that says, no, that's not what we do. But if it's a project, if it's a, how do you get from A to Z, who works, B through Y, DVIP and RVAP, that's what we do. That's our wheelhouse. That's like, how do we make all these pieces fit that don't look like they necessarily fit together? It's 24 hours a day. It doesn't end. And that's regardless of the department that you're in. Even if you go home and you're technically done for the day, it's really hard to shut your brain off and not continue to figure out what's the next level, what's the next thing, what's the next step, how do we make this better? Or at least that's how I think. I oftentimes go to sleep thinking about DVIP and RVAP, and it's oftentimes the first thing I think about when I wake up. So it's exhausting, and I feel very lucky to have that as my problem, but I'd like to turn it off someday. It's like, there are some days that I'd be like, no, I can't think about it, but immediately it's what I do. So it's a good problem to have. Like, if there has to be something like, oh, I don't like that, then that's it. Personally. Professionally, I hate that there's never enough. I hate that victim survivors are constantly having to piece it together. I would much rather be able to just present them a package and be like, here you go. This is the healing package that we have. We can afford this. We can do this. We can help get you to A to B to C without having to beg for our dollars. But this is the world we live in. And so we have a very, active engagement department. We have a great community in which supports us and gives to us whenever we ask. But I would love for victim survivors not to have to ask. We've recently gone through a lot of changes. Having been with the organization for 26 years, I have been able to evolve with the organization, but watch the organization evolve. So while I was not one of the people who was on the house on Iowa Avenue back in the day, I am aware of that house, right? Like a singular house in the middle of downtown, then growing into a program and a building that housed more than just a few rooms, right? And it growing into youth services and having both outreach services and youth services and serving outside of Johnson County and serving multiple communities and then serving even more communities, right? So DVIP RVAP is always growing. It is always evolving. We just opened up our new shelter, taking in twice the capacity. We're still feeling those growing pains and like, okay, how's this shift? But with that also comes, what do people need, right? Like the complex trauma that they're dealing with. How do we meet those needs? And so we're listening to the people that we're working with and saying, this, what they're telling us is how we're looking to shift. And I think housing is a key part of DVIP and RVAP's future. I don't know exactly what that will look like, but I think it's necessary because people want sustainability. They want stability. And so while we assist people with housing now, I think ultimately it will play a much bigger part in our services in the future because that's what people need and that's what they want. I think in terms of victim services as a whole, it is cyclical. So, So right now we're kind of in a swing backwards from a lot of the progress that we have made. We're fighting for our autonomy. We're fighting for our choices. We're fighting for the ability to be recognized genuinely as individuals. And so I think DVIP and RVAP's responsibility to that is just to pay attention and to make sure that we can serve everyone. And so that victim services in that fight is also making that a key objective. We don't want anyone to have to hide in shame because of something someone did to them. So to be able to be supportive of them and to help them move to a healthier space in life, I think will always be the fight and will always be the goal of victim services. But I do think it has evolved to include more people. If people say, well, that happens over there, but doesn't happen to me or doesn't happen to anyone I know, I would challenge them on that and say, is it that it doesn't happen to anyone you know or do you just not know? Because they're still feeling the shame of it. They still don't have the resources to be able to access healing for it. And I would invite anyone and everyone to be a part of creating a system that allows people to heal. I think some of the strongest individuals are people who can sit in a space of uncertainty and still thrive and survive. I try to do that. I don't know if I always make that mark, but the work needs to be here. The doors need to be open. Someone needs to be here to be able to say, I believe you. And that's the anchor. That's where I stand and that's where I stay. And so whatever comes what may, whatever tomorrow brings, that will still be my goal and my objective and what I will work towards for everyone, create access for everyone. At the base of every advocate's work is humanity and honoring humanity and honoring and respecting individuals and people. And I think when you're working with people who respect people of all likes and worlds and walks, that is always something that a community can be proud of. And DVIP and RVAP are, as I said before, consistent in that. We don't wobble. We don't sway in that objective, in that purpose, in that belief that with unconditional regard, individuals need to be respected and honored in their decisions and their choices. I've been doing this work for a long time, and so I think that ultimately at the base of this work, at the foundation of this work, is the people that we work with, the people that make sacrifices to do the work. And I think that is often not recognized, really, and people don't know what we do. They don't understand how complex the work is of being an advocate and how necessary it is in opening doors and keeping access. But what I will say is in the communities that I've worked with and the stakeholders that I've worked with, they come to the table ready to hear us because ultimately, while they may not understand what we do or understand how a victim survivor becomes a victim survivor or they're in that position, they want better things for people. So having done that and having had that experience, it keeps me in a space of having faith in this world and having faith in the people even when things start to feel dark.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for believing that the work truly matters. If you have questions or need help, call one of our 24/7 free and confidential crisis hotlines, 1-800-373-1043 or 1-800-228-1625. Thank you to KRUI Radio 89.7 FM for providing us with the space to record this podcast.